the garden tour. We hope this is going to be an annual event. So I hope you have a great time. The gardens are absolutely gorgeous. We previewed them last week, and they're really ready to show themselves off.
We're gonna, each house is between 5 and 10 minutes. This is about 5 minutes. We're heading out this way and we'll start. We're gonna be there for about 20 minutes at each house.
Vivian, this is Ray. And so we purchased the house in 1979, so we've been here 44 years. And we purchased it from a widower and his family that had lived here for 33 years, I think it was. So we inherited it was like a secret garden. They were wonderful, they were gardeners. The wife was a gardener, but then she later in life became ill, and so everything just sort of stopped. So a lot of the big trees that you see around here are what I call sort of our legacy trees. We have some, the plethora over there, huge shrub that was here. So there were a number, so we really inherited some really special things, but it was just, lots of weeds. And so over time, it obviously evolved. We created kind of gardens, sort of islands around the trees. That became kind of the way of adding things. Most of the plants here that you see here weren't purchased. A lot of them came from friends. I have to give a shout out to Scott Arboretum. Since 2017, we've become volunteers there, and we've gotten lots of plants from them through dividends. So one of the things in planting was my belief is when you remove weeds, you need to put something in right away, and if it's aggressive, it's fine as long as it's easy to get out at some point when you want to. So yeah, so a couple of the features here I'll walk you through and then hand it over to Ray to talk about some of our special other features. The royal fern is really happy here. I had it for about 15 years up by the patio, and it did nothing. It looked horrible. And so I finally moved it, had the good sense to move it, and it just went crazy. So it's been doing really well here. And then for texture, we have Petasites, and you see some new sort of plantings in between that are pretty recent that we got as dividends or from the exchange. Our bald cypress, so we have a lot of natives. We do have the Symphotis, or sapphire berry, is not native. That was here when we moved in. And you just missed the big bloom of that, but it has gorgeous berries that have this beautiful blue color, and the birds do love it. They go sweeping through and eating them, and it has a lot of pollinators on the flowers. So for whatever reason, so if you want to have a lot of woodland asters back in here. And then over here, we have a couple of the native cultivar hydrangeas. This one again was a dividend from Scott. Invincible Spirit, which is just gorgeous when that blooms. And we have blueberry bushes along the side of the property, kind of around on the edge here, and then on the west side of the property. So I'm going to walk you over to this area. I'll just point out one more thing and then let you wander and ask. We have a sort of an alley of raspberries. We don't get any blueberries. The birds get all the blueberries right away. It doesn't matter when I pick them. They eat them green.
Be really good.
But the raspberries, I have found, if they're just beginning to turn, and you pick them, it's overnight, they become delicious. They become ripe and really sweet. So we got the raspberry alley and a little bit of a vegetable garden over there, and this willow oak. That's probably about, I think, 15 years old. Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's around 15 years old. I found it as a seedling. I mean, literally, it was this big in the garden, and I looked at it and I thought, this looks a little bit like a willow oak, and I love willow oaks. So we planted it, and then I roamed the neighborhood thinking, where did it come from? Because I knew a squirrel had planted it, and sure enough, I found the mother trees on the corner over here, 2 huge willow oaks. We do have a couple of sunny spots. We have this area here, and then Ray will the roses, I would say take some time to smell the roses because they really are beautiful. Right now, this is, that's kind of but the red rose back there, the very thorny one, which is not fun to prune, that was here. That was a legacy rose. And we do have a native rose, actually, which is a little thuggish. I have to cut that back. But that's over the azalea right here in the corner. You can see the mock orange blooming above it. And just between the mock orange and the azalea, there's it's not blooming yet, but it will. And that's a one-time bloom. But we do have a native mock orange. If you go along the outside of the property, it has a much smaller flower, and it was actually found during the Lewis and Clark expedition. So the Latin name is Philadelphus lewisii, I guess is how you say it, named after Lewis. And it looks a little different, but it's blooming right now, and it's right next to the non-native mock orange, which is kind of fun. And those were legacy prints. And smoke bush is actually blooming right now.
Is that what the red flowers are?
No, that's our native honeysuckle.
Oh, okay.
That's which I love, and I'm actually trying to get, there's some against that wall. We're trying to get that to do with that's an older one. So I love it. It's just beautiful, and we have a yellow one actually on our deck.
But that's not native.
And that's
right?
native.
Oh, it is native.
Yes, it's a variant of the native, so those are all native. And then the fringe tree, of course, is native. That we used to live on 2nd Street, so we brought that over. That was the one tree because we had a really tiny garden, and that was the one tree we could have. And
The fringe tree? Is
the
that
fringe
this?
tree, yeah, which is very fragrant. I don't know if today with the rain, I don't know if it's just the whole yard, just between the mock orange and the fringe. It's an old.
It's an amazing trunk.
This came from our old house, prior house on 2nd Street. And so this is at least 50 years old, and one recommendation by the head of the Maine Horticultural Society was, especially for fringe trees, they send up suckers, little runners, and he said, well, just favor one, let that grow, and then when this eventually dies, this will take over as the main stem of the tree. So the tree will go on even though the original trunk's no longer in existence.
Ray built the little shed over there from bricks from our old chimney, and this is our little shed. And I love the door. Our daughter lives in Oregon, and we visited her and went to the Timberline Lodge, which is one of those old lodges that were built during the Franklin, Roosevelt time. The
Works Progress Administration, WPA.
And it was just beautiful. I mean, I think.
Well, the issue was, once the bricks were built, how do I attach the roof to it? Because this was too large of a span, the width of the door to bridge. So at the Timberline Lodge, they had a design where they realized that, well, you need shoulder width, but the head doesn't have to be so far. So they had their doorways leaning in. So I thought, well, why don't I do that with bricks? So that way I can support the roof.
Amazing.
So it was a mixture of design and serendipity. They had the design, I had the serendipity.
And this is an Annabelle, one of the, again, native hydrangeas that has big white blossoms. But the other one, Invincible, is a lace cap, and those are actually better for the pollinators because they don't have just sterile flowers. They have actually two flowers that have pollen. So they're still beautiful, but it's the lace caps that really are the great pollinating.
Because they do. They have like.
That's called Beauty Bush. Colquitzia is the Latin name. And it's in the honeysuckle family, I think.
Well, welcome to my garden. I have lived in this house for about 25 years. When we first moved here, there wasn't one plant. except this sensitive fern plant, which has, you know, spread a bit in our garden, but just grass and a sensitive fern, a cyclone fence around the property, and that's it. And so over the last 25 years, we have been working on this outdoor space to make it our own. Many of the plants are, a lot of the plants are from other people's gardens. A lot from my mom. She's an avid gardener, and so that's really very nostalgic for me. A lot of the plants that you'll see, some of my favorites, which are just coming to the end, are forget-me-nots and bleeding hearts, which were all plants that remind me of my childhood. So when I walk around my garden, it's kind of like a story, and it means a lot to me because I think of the people and the places that they came from. So yeah, that's a really important part of my garden. Also, as you can see, it's a small space. We're in a twin, so my backyard just goes straight back. We'll also walk around the whole property, but we bought this as a starter home, so we're like, oh, well, you know, we'll be here for a little bit and then we'll move to something bigger, but we realized that we did not need to do that. We love our neighborhood. In fact, our neighbors, we all had cyclone fences between them, and we took them down to kind of make it feel like one big backyard because we have neighborhood gatherings and and events. So it does feel really inclusive and open to the neighbors, which is really nice. So when we decided to stay here, we started to get creative and do everything that we want to do just in a small space. So I don't have full sun, but I have a bit of sun and shade. So I love to incorporate a diverse amount of plants, perennials, shrubs, trees, edibles. I also have a background in agriculture, so I love to grow food. So you'll see a lot of food all over. I've got strawberries growing. Anywhere I can stick something in a pot, I'm gonna have a great I was waiting for this garden tour. Now we're gonna eat salad. So I stick edibles like kale and greens that can withstand, you know, some shade. In lots of pots and within the garden. This is a pear tree. You'll see baby pears on there. This is a Bartlett pear. I also grow berries and herbs. You'll see more up front. We also have incorporated a flock of chickens. This is our third flock. We've had chickens for about 18 years. So we love how the chickens bring a little life to the garden. We also get eggs. We get manure. Yeah, this is sorry. We get eggs, probably have a few. We get fresh eggs every day, which is really nice. So we try to fit it all in. One day we hope to make this into a studio / greenhouse space, but you know, it's just like inch by inch, it's a cinch. Everything from that you see hardscape, my husband does. He's very handy. He built this chicken coop, that fence there. He milled all the lumber from a tree in his parents' yard. Wow. So he does a lot of the woodworking and the stonework. We put all these rock walls in. We scavenged a lot of stuff from the trash, from the side of the road. We kind of just use what we can find and what we have to make it into our own space, which we really love. I know you're on a schedule, so before I move into the side and the front of my house, I just want to allow you all to look and ask any questions you might have of what you're seeing. It's okay if you don't.
Love all your lettuces.
Yes.
Yeah, really.
I know. And lettuces, well, today, this is the weather that lettuces love. Soon it'll start to get a bit hot.
Yep.
So we'll be harvesting all of those and eating them, and then it'll make room for other things. A lot of the things that you see in my pots, I just want to mention, I put a lot of perennials in my pots so that I don't have to buy annuals year after year. I do plug a couple little ones, so it helps with our budget, and also they just come back year after year, which makes it nice that I don't have to worry about what I'm gonna go out and buy. I still buy a ton of plants, I'm not gonna lie. I am a little bit of a plant addict. It's my addiction, but I love plants, so I'm always trying something.
Addiction.
Yeah.
As they go, yes.
So the other thing I'll mention is the style of gardening that we do, which is obviously cover every inch of space, also really helps with weed pressure. So I always am weeding, but I don't have a lot of weed pressure because, you know, everything else is crowding out the weeds. It also keeps the soil a lot more moist, so I don't have to mulch for weeds or to keep the water in, so it keeps me from having to water a lot. Obviously it's great for wildlife and attracting all kinds of insects and birds, so it's cramming a lot in a small space, but I think there's a lot of benefits to that.
Yeah, we just saw a movie last night and they talked about regenerative farming, and they talked about, you know, the plants are what helps actually the whole rain system and everything, because
Yes.
so
Yes.
yeah, so it's the more ground that's covered by growing things, the better we are.
Exactly, yeah.
How
So
many years did it take you to realize that this was not going to be just a temporary couple of years?
I'd say, you know, probably 5-8 years.
Yeah.
You know, we did start to we had 2 daughters, and we realized like we don't really need a lot of space. I mean, we built out, we use every space we can. So we use what we have, and we're, instead of moving into something bigger, we're just utilizing and making our space as efficient as possible. We love our neighbors, we love this town, so it's like, why do we have to do why do we have to go bigger?
Right.
So yeah, let me move, we'll walk this way. Yeah, so just, you know, my back porch is a place that we spend a lot of time in. My husband built this fence to hide kind of our grill, but I also have like a little potting bench out there. We utilize every inch. We wanted to get rid of all the grass so we wouldn't have to mow, and so that we could, you know, garden the style that we like. So this is usually, people call this the hell strip. We even put as many plants as here as possible, including a mix of perennials and edibles. This is horseradish, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah.
I have currants, I have gooseberries up front. I have to grow edibles that can withstand a little bit of shade because I don't have full sun all day. But there's a lot of things you can grow that you can eat that don't need full sun. Yeah. So this is my shadiest part of my garden. I'm still kind of figuring out. This is always my problem area, but you know, I trying to find things that really love shade, and you know, it's always a work in progress. Yeah, so this is new. This was just you'll see when we go in the front. We had a glass porch just like my neighbors. And we never used it. So instead, we wanted to make our house more efficient. So we turned this into a bigger living room and a new entrance. So our entrance used to be over there, now it's here. And so, yeah, I love the space that this created. This is gooseberry. If anyone has never eaten a gooseberry, I wish they were ripe to show you. But this is a lovely berry that kind of tastes like a grape. It's almost a little sour. And it can withstand pretty good amounts of shade. So this was dug up from my grandparents' garden, and it's taken off and really likes the space. So people walking by, you know, that's the other thing. We live in kind of a fishbowl, being on the corner, but we love talking to people walking by. It's kind of a demonstration to people of what you can do in a small space. We don't mind if people stop and nibble and try things. It's just part of living in a town and living on a corner.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How do you plant your window boxes?
So
You
there's
notice that-
inserts in them.
Oh, there's inserts.
So there's
but you take
plastic
them out.
inserts in them, and so when I have to plant them, I will pull them out and plant them all, and then put them back
You
in.
need like 3. Oh,
No,
are
they're
they smaller
very
inserts?
smaller, and the way I plant them, you plant them so you can't tell there's dividers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because they're so
Yeah.
full.
They're just starting too, so they need to get even fuller. But yeah, my grandfather built those for me. And,
wonderful.
yeah, and there's perennials in them as well. I try to put perennials in all my pots so that I don't have as much.
That's what I
to do
thought.
everywhere.
Yeah, we were talking about it. It looked like they were pretty.
Yeah.
What's this purple flower?
This is called oh my gosh.
Columbine.
Is it a columbine?
I thought it looked like columbine, but I couldn't think of the name.
Yes, it is columbine.
It's
So it's
beautiful.
aqualesia. So I went to horticulture school, so everything's Latin to me.
Right,
Aqualesia,
yeah.
the columbine. Yeah,
Good
it's
for
like
you.
a little fairy hat.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
those
Yeah,
so
those
much.
are pretty.
Yeah.
And the flowers in your bird bath, you plant them there?
Well, I did that for you all today.
Oh,
I got that
sweet.
inspiration. Have anybody been to Chanticleer? Have you ever
I
been to
was
that
years
garden?
ago.
I was years
So
ago too.
when you
A
go
garden
there,
club
they always have these beautiful water basins full of flower heads. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do Chanticleer today at Second and Edgemont.
I was confused. I thought I wasn't Chanticleer.
I've never done that before. This is all for you. That's all for you.
And I bet the birds like it.
Yeah, actually, there was a bird bathing in it the other day. I was like, oh, it's getting a little flower bath.
That's funny.
So this was kind of one of the most recent things we've done. I'm not going to say the last. There's always something we're working on. This was just a hill of grass, and I was just kind of working on what I wanted it to be. So I started to kind of do layers of different plants and perennials. And I thought, okay, maybe we'll do another rock retaining wall here to hold it all in. But then my brother-in-law is a mason, and he just had all this salvage stone, and we thought, hey, why don't we just make a raised bed / retaining wall? So this is where we do get a good amount of sun, and we grow a lot of edibles. I love, obviously it's lettuce time. This is kohlrabi, which is my favorite crop. Not a lot of people know what it is, but it's basically a swollen broccoli stem. It tastes a lot like a broccoli stem, but sweeter. It gets no pest problems. It's beautiful. And I eat every single one. Nobody in my house likes them but me, so I'll eat every kohlrabi.
And the foliage is edible too, right?
It is. I don't normally eat it. I'll give that to my
They grow that in
chickens.
Germany too.
But it's gorgeous. It's so unique. It's a beautiful vegetable. So we've got I eat a lot of kale. The peas, they're like showing off for you all. I'm like, oh, the peas are peak for this garden tour. I've got one sugar snap pretty much ready to eat. There are a lot of herbs.
Yeah.
My garden goes to here, and so this used to be our original staircase to the house, and so instead of getting rid of it, I'm like, okay, it's just another place to put some more pots and grow some more things. So, yeah, fitting in a lot in a small space is very doable, and yeah, it just takes some time.
Do you hire yourself out for design?
I have done garden design in the past. I have to say, I'm not the best. My mom and sister are more pen on paper designers. It does come and run in the family. I'm more of, I just like design as I go. I'm not the best at like doing
Mapping
it all
it
on
out,
paper. I'm
yeah.
good at like giving advice and giving ideas, but I'm not the best at drawing it all out. I wish I was.
So is your
It's awesome.
So this is called Cotoneaster. This is just an evergreen shrub, and it's a great ground cover type of shrub, especially on hillsides. And yeah, right now it's showing off with its flower, and then it puts out a beautiful red berry. And it's evergreen, so it looks good all year. It's like a good 4-season interest kind of plant. So I'd like to mix in a mix of evergreen and deciduous, which means it loses its leaves, just so your garden has some interest all year round. And it's not just everything's looking dead. Even though dead is beautiful too. I think that all stages of plant life are beautiful. But yeah, it's nice to design and think about just different textures and heights and peaks of interest.
Is that mint in the pot?
Yes, this is some mint. You gotta keep mint in a pot.
I learned the
because
hard
it
way.
will spread and take over for sure. Yeah, lots of different herbs in here, tarragon and chives and sorrel. I love Swiss chard.
Swiss chard,
That's
yeah.
another great green because it's the one green that doesn't peter out in the summer. It will grow until frost and it kind of tastes and cooks up like spinach. So it's nice to have this. I have luck growing kale all year long too, just because I don't have full sun. But sometimes the kale and the brassicas, which are in the broccoli family, don't love hot weather, but they do pretty good for me here. Lots of nasturtiums, which are edible flowers, which I love.
Right.
You can put them in salads, and they're just a beautiful plant, and they'll eventually cascade.
But they're annual, right?
They are.
Yeah.
Yes. They're easy to seed. You can
Yeah,
even just
yeah.
seed them right into the ground or into a
And do
pot.
they reseed themselves sometimes?
Sometimes, but rarely. I have not had a nasturtium. I don't have luck with that, but it's possible. I know. So you're going to a great garden next, which is Tom and Adams. You're going to really enjoy that.
So we moved to this house 19 years ago, and just about everything is new, except for those azaleas, and there's a holly. So all the hardscaping we did, all the planting we did. I guess you could say one of the driving style of the garden is sort of a cottage garden. There's a lot of self-sown stuff. Things like forget-me-nots and columbine, and you can just see it's just sort of become this matrix of plants. So we pull out what we don't want, but we let grow what we do want, and sometimes we move them around. So I'm a landscape designer by profession, and one of the important things for me is to create a sense of space. So you'll see in the back, and as you go through the whole garden, there are spaces that are created that make the relatively small property seem larger. So this paths are sort of circuitous, and there's a destination which is a patio, and paths that go all the way around the house. So you could really just keep walking around the house and keep seeing things. I don't know if you want to say something, Adam.
I don't know what you said.
Out of nothing. No. So the construction of this wall was coincidental with the pandemic, and it wasn't originally going to have annuals, but there were so many people walking during the pandemic, so we decided just to make this as colorful as possible. And then Adam added these toys for the kids, which mostly, we went to the beach one weekend right after a hurricane, and all this was washed up. Just like piles of shells and toys and sunglasses.
Everybody else was grabbing the shells and the nice things, and we were grabbing all the plastic.
The toys and the plastic stuff, that's a good
Even a half a set of dentures.
and so this was not supposed to be permanent, but now the kids the parents bring their kids to see it, and
And the kids insist on seeing it, so I don't want it.
You have to have a screen in front of it.
I don't want it. We're going to probably build a new wall over on the other side, and I might move it over there next. Once that wall is done. I do enjoy. I work at home, and my office is there, and I do enjoy hearing the kids.
Oh, I bet.
Getting excited. I'd rather hear that than hear them cry when they're no toys.
Yeah.
And sometimes
To be distracted from their pain.
sometimes it's teenagers sort of going down memory lane.
Right, remembering.
The toys.
Wow.
So let's let people come in. You can go. We're just gonna answer questions from here on in. So,
But you can go, it's a full circuit around the house.
just watch your step because it is slippery. This is a bok choy that went to seed.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
So we never got to eat it, but it is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe
And
it.
this is a cabbage, a kale that you would plant in the fall. But if you do let those things winter over, and then they will go to seed in the spring.
How about this?
That's an allium. Yeah, there's a few different types. There's an allium here that's just growing out of a crack that seeded itself in. That's an andina, which is borderline invasive now. So.
Like it's a hard thing. Agaves actually grow really easily from seed, and they grow really quickly. Really? So it's not even.
Amazing. But isn't this really heavy to? Do you have to bring this in? It's yeah.
It's really.
It's a beast. You bring it inside, he said they have like a sun porch, and they bring all the succulents into the sun porch.
And agaves need like almost no. They don't even need sun in the winter. You can put them inside a house. And,
just so that the temperature's moderate.
they don't care. And you don't even, they require very little water in the winter. It's very easy. But then as soon as summer comes, you put them out. They grow fast. And you can see them change. So
About how many years old is this?
Yeah, you have to ask Adam. I'm not sure, but then occasionally we have to get rid of them. We donate them to a place like Chanticleer. There's somebody who can take a plant that big.
Does it flower?
No, it hasn't flowered. I mean, they will flower.
Okay.
But they have to be really old
Okay.
to flower.
Oh wow.
And then, when they do flower, the flower stalk is like 12 feet high.
Oh my. Really old.
And it's like a candelabra.
Wow.
It's
Oh my
huge.
goodness.
And then that part of the plant dies.
Nice. So it's like it's its final hurrah.
But there are always babies. And like what Adam, you don't see any babies because Adam keeps extracting them. Let me see if I can find one where
Another pot.
yeah, he keeps pulling them out. And I guess he's done them all. Like these are all babies he's pulled off of bigger ones than that. Like probably from that one. Because if you don't, then they become too crowded.
Right.
One last thing I don't think we mentioned, but an unusual plant is that pomegranate, which has lived there.
The tall one?
It's just beginning to bloom now. You don't see many pomegranates around.
No.
And this happens to be a sterile variety, so it doesn't set fruit. But if it wasn't, it would set fruit. And then there'd be a big mess all over the sidewalk.
Well, we're on it. We're continuing this way. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So this is gonna, I take it you've seen some gardens already. This one's gonna be very different than the ones you've seen, and I guess there's one more you'll see after this. Those gardens are really magnificent. I went on the tour last week for the people that are hosting, and I was just blown away. But this is a very different kind of place. It's sort of specific to the site. My wife and I bought this house about 12 years ago, and the first 3 years we just spent renovating. It was considered a tear down. It was in really, really rough shape. So we didn't really get to think about the outside of the house until well into our living here. So that's excuse number one. Excuse number two is that I'm from the city and never had any exposure to gardens or plants, and we had no place to do that, and I knew no one who was even interested in it. So we started from scratch when we came here. So obviously we inherited a lot of big trees. Everything that's not 12 years old or older, we planted. This place was totally overrun and neglected, and we spent years just pulling stuff out before we could even start planting anything. There was one guy who was a Vietnam vet who used to walk up and down here with his dog and said he would get flashbacks when he when he looked at our. It was a joke, I'm sure, but
right. Yeah.
Anyway, that's how jungly it looked.
Yeah.
My wife and I, from the outset, decided that what we wanted to do here, when we did get around to thinking about the outside of the house, was to sort of exploit what was here already and create sort of like a woodland kind of garden. So you're not going to see all the like really beautiful plants and flowers and stuff that you've seen at the other gardens. We wanted it to be a little bit more naturalistic. Not knowing what we were doing and still learning, we made a lot of mistakes and put things in the wrong places. Things that we thought were natives turned out not to be. And we didn't really start to understand the value of planting native stuff until a few years into this. So there's a mix of stuff, but and we did a lot of stone work and stuff, because stone and trees are like the theme for this this property. The only grass. How you doing? The only grass we have is just this little strip. Other than that, everything else is planted. So some of these trees obviously are not native, the sweet cherry, the Japanese maple, but you know, I'm not taking those down because they're beautiful trees. I especially love this cherry. It's just this gorgeous white flowers, and you don't see cherries that big often. But over here, we have a tremendous forest of Norway maples, which is probably one of the worst trees you could have around here. And we have over the years taken one down a year maybe and replaced it with native trees, which you know, like tupelos and oaks and other kinds of this buckeye. We try to put more trees in than we take down, but I mean, we won't live long enough to see it looking like this. But there are two locust trees which are magnificent, and that's actually responsible for all these little white petals. They flower in the spring and they're fragrant. They're just great trees. So you can see I'm tree oriented. That was our focus, my focus initially, and then we started thinking about other kinds of plants. But in addition to the Norway maples, we provide a really good home for lots of invasive species, all the way from ground cover English ivy that have taken over to the Norway maples and everything in between, which we're trying to deal with, but it's a lose-lose battle. This house is built on solid rock. It was a thing, even though it was totally dilapidated, it actually was considered a tear down when we bought it. It's pretty solid. It's built on rock. Those walls were there. There's so much rock that they couldn't even get a gas line up to it. So yeah, it's just sitting right on top of rock. So everywhere in the property is rock. And you'll see in the back I have a vegetable garden, and I had to do raised beds because like anywhere you put a shovel in this ground, you're gonna hit rock.
It's amazing we've done everything in Holland, though. I mean, yeah.
I have to tell you, just doing simple planning is like 5 times harder than somewhere else might be, because you hit a rock and you have to dig around it, and it takes forever. And
Did you plant this red buckeye, it says?
yes.
So will that grow into a tree?
Yeah, that'll get
Buckeyes
pretty
are
big.
big.
We're going to try to keep it a little bit smaller. But yeah, that'll get,
It's such beautiful bloom.
yeah, it does. It's really beautiful.
That's great. And then does it get the buckeyes? It gets
I haven't really noticed anything other than
in the blossoms.
the blossoms. Yeah,
Yeah. And the foliage is beautiful too.
yeah. That's,
Looks like a magnolia. I mean, the waxy element of it.
yeah. So like I said, pretty much everything here except for the really big trees we've planted. The chestnut oak, the red buds. We plant the pagoda dogwood, which is the key tree out there, and this is another one. Our native trees. Yeah, you can tell they kind of grow in tiers, which is why they call it the pagoda.
Yeah.
And the flowers are very different than like that kusa dogwood, which I thought was native.
That's what
Isn't.
we used to have. It's the Japanese. Kusa.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what we have.
I like this other one though. Yeah. The other one is really cool.
It's not quite as showy.
yeah, which I really like, which is also why I like this cherry tree so much, because it flowers, but it's not just like, it's just more modest.
It's like
Then
subtle as
It
opposed
is,
to
and
like,
it's just so gorgeous. I love it. And so up this way, we've been playing with putting in some native things, and some sweet spire, and the ferns are native for the most part. There's different kinds, but these are hay-scented ferns, and that The juniper is a gray owl juniper, which is also native. We put these stairs in here. This was just a dirt hill. I didn't do it personally. My daughter's boyfriend did it.
Oh, he did a good job. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
he's great.
And the railing.
That I bartered for. That was done by a professional metal
It
worker.
looks like a very professional.
So this is evidence of 2 Norway maples we took down just this year. And what we do is we have them cut it in rounds, and so I split it after about a year. We have a wood stove in the house, and we every year or two we take down one of the Norway maples and plant something else in its place and burn the wood. So this is just a dense forest of Norway maples, and they're just a terrible tree. They're allelopathic.
What does that mean?
Well, they sit through the roots. They send out a chemical that suppresses other things from growing around it. So you oftentimes find stands of just Norway maples, and they're like really densely shaded, so that keeps. It's another way of keeping other things from growing.
I think black walnuts do that.
Yes,
also.
they do. They're
My
also
my former
allelopathic, and
neighbors.
there's one right there.
Yeah. I didn't know they were called allelopathic. I'll have to tell my neighbor.
Yes, and I made the
Maggie,
mistake of putting my compost pile right under the walnut tree.
Oh dear.
So I have to be careful where I use that compost. Like I can't put it in my tomatoes because it will kill tomatoes.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
What a nightmare.
So this stone wall was here. This was all planted. We put the fence in. Over here is something that I'm sort of obsessive about. These are pawpaw trees.
Oh yeah.
Pawpaws are interesting. Like other kinds of trees, that they like some other trees, they need 2 species to pollinate and produce fruit. So I discovered that when I first read about the fact that there's a native tree that produces like a tropical kind of fruit, I was like really intrigued. So this is one of the first things I think I bought for the property, and they were this big. And in 5 years they started the fruit, but I started going over to Swarthmore has a stand of about 5 or 6 of these, and I actually, in the spring, I go there with a paintbrush and I take the pollen from the flowers and I hand pollinate these when the flowers come out. So I get tons and tons of fruit, and if you've never tasted a pawpaw, they're amazing. Not everybody loves them, but I love them, and we get way more than we can eat, especially since my wife doesn't even like them. But in September, we usually post in Nextdoor Media, like just giving them away because they rot really quick, which is one of the reasons why you don't see them in stores. They're not very commercially viable.
Is it similar to any other tropical fruit that you know of, like in taste or
I've heard it
texture?
described as a cross between a banana and a mango.
Okay.
And the-
That would be pretty good.
Yeah, and the other thing that keeps them from being commercially viable is they have a lot of really big seeds in them.
Yeah.
So what we do is we cut them in half, like lengthwise, and you just kind of scoop
Scoop the seeds out.
Well, you scoop the
Oh, the
pulp out with a spoon. That's like custardy.
Oh,
So that's how you eat it. But they're amazing
When are
tasting.
they
And
in season?
they come out in September, just like apples and pears and stuff. They're you can see actually they're flowered, and there's some fruit starting to grow right here. I don't know if you can see it right here. They grow in clusters like that.
oh wow.
So they end up being like almost the size of mangoes.
Yeah.
This hill came all the way down to here. And one of the things my wife was insistent on, and rightly so, was that we have a place that we can pull in so that we can turn around and go down the driveway frontward, so we didn't have to like back
Oh yeah,
down.
really? I can't imagine backing
So-
down.
given that, like I said, this is all stone. This was all stone. We had to jackhammer this.
Oh my God.
And this wall and bench are made from the stone from here.
Oh my
That came
gosh.
From here. And you'll see that we have a whole vegetable garden and do a lot of edibles. And because of how much rock and stone is there, like I had to do raised
That's
beds.
what I have to do too.
One of the things I've become interested in, like I'm totally new to this and I don't do a great job, but I'm trying, is to try and figure out like what I can grow, what are perennial edibles so that I don't have to, I mean, I do grow lots of lettuce and stuff that I have to plant every year, but there's blackberries and blueberries along the back there that I share with the birds. Strawberries, all the way in the back are Jerusalem artichokes, asparagus. So I'm trying to do more and more stuff that just will come back every year. I've purposely planted purslane, which a lot of people consider a weed, but is one of the most nutritious greens on the
So you
planet.
use
What's
it
it
with
called
salad?
again?
Purslane.
Purslane.
This right in the
You
front.
probably
Put
you
it in
might
salad.
see. Yeah, you put it in salad. You might find it in it's. People consider it a weed, and it looks like a little jade plant. It
It's
looks
kind of
almost like-
succulent.
yeah, it looks like a succulent. Yeah.
Wow. It is a little.
So I've intentionally planted that because that will come back every year, and I've intentionally planted dandelions because they're super
Really good
nutritious
for you.
also. And the other thing is I try to grow as much red because it's more nutritious, like that amaranth.
So do you eat the foliage? Because I've used the amaranth
Yeah.
grain,
Yeah,
but
yeah. You eat the leaves, just throw them in a salad.
So will they
guess
get
the
much
grain-
bigger than that biggest one?
Oh yeah, they'll get.
Like a leaf? Like
The
a red
plants
leaf
will get
lettuce?
5 feet tall.
Oh my.
And they're beautiful. They're really beautiful. They have these really big, like fuzzy flowers at the top.
so that must be where the seeds come from.
Yeah.
I guess that's the grain that gets ground,
Yeah.
or you can cook it just as a grain.
Yeah, and it's like considered a superfood, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've kind of become really interested in nutritionally dense
Yeah.
foods.
Yeah. What a cool space.
So
What's this?
that's a fig tree,
Awesome.
which I almost killed last year. I didn't wrap it up for the winter good enough. That's supposed to be a hardy. I mean, fig trees. This is like the northernmost extent of their range, supposedly. And this is called a Chicago hardy. It's supposed to be able to be wintered over, so I didn't really wrap it that well last winter. Not this past one, the one before.
Yeah.
And I thought it was dead, and then all of a sudden it started sprouting leaves like way late into the season. So this winter, I really wrapped it up
Do
nicely.
you cut it back?
I cut back what died.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
What a beautiful home.
Thank
Beautiful
you.
place.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
It's like a
and-
retreat.
Yeah.
yeah.
This is our your last group of the day.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you've seen all the great stuff. Now you're seeing a work in progress. And I started to go native about 3 years ago. I had retired, seeking new meaning to my life, reading Doug Tallamy, all, and figure out this. I could do this as a way of contributing, and so this is actually the most finished part of the going native process. What you're seeing here, and that part there is called the devil strip or the hell strip. Do you know why it's called that?
So hard
What?
because it's so hard to get.
That's what it's thought. Because people trample on it, dogs poop on it, and so on. But you've been to Amy's place, so you know that that's not true. You can make something out of the hell strip. And even I, a new, native plant gardener, is showing that you can do something with a hell strip. And do you know what this is?
Is it a mountain mint?
No, it is. It is a Canada goldenrod. And it will be due to be Chelsea chopped, but in my own way now because it's an experiment. Because that's when you start to go native and you know nothing, you learn from the experts, but you also think, well, you can give yourself the freedom to experiment. And so the Chelsea chop is a British concept suited to the British climate, you know, and they're supposed to start doing it the beginning of June. But Philadelphia media climate is not UK climate, and so I decided that I would try to do a gradual. You know, when it looks like it needs it, I will cut it back, and it'll grow bushier, and I will cut back lower in the front around the outside area, and then the lower outside area will hold up the inside area. So that's the idea. And if I'm completely wrong about it, I will realize this towards the end of the year, and I will try something different next year. But yeah, that's a fun of.
Stick, but you could put a string around it.
I have done that in the past, yeah. But I think that I would prefer to have it
Holding itself up.
Holding itself up, yeah, exactly. This is one of my favorites. It's a common yarrow, and it will it's almost going to flower. This is the purple poppy mallow again, you know. Phlox here. Spiderwort, Virginia spiderwort here.
That's native too, right?
Yeah, these are all
I had
native.
that. Did I give you some, Lori? Did you get spiderwort from me?
And this is evening primrose, and it volunteered here, and I'm not going to fight it too much, but you know, I may chop it down a little bit later. Honeysuckle, native iris here. Here's the mountain mint. This is the mountain mint.
Will that be invasive like other mint? Like is
Oh, well, I mean, invasive is in the eye of the beholder. I think that it'll grow very nicely, but I don't think it'll grow crazily. And this is dianthus.
wow.
Sweet William.
Oh, how pretty.
Yeah.
Doesn't always grow that tall. I mean, we have dianthus in our neighborhood, and it's very short.
Yeah, I have
It's
short dianthus.
It's like a ground color.
This is just a
almost,
tube.
you know, it's about
Sweet
10
William, you
inches.
said?
Yeah.
But Sweet William is taller.
Oh, the sweet
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. And I guess after it flowers, I should probably cut it down and see what it does, you know, whether it will
Bloom
flower
again.
again. Right. The other thing is that, I don't know if I mentioned this already, that when I started, I started on a both limited budget and limited time. Even though I'm retired, my time is still limited. Go figure. So one does what one can. And so this is one of my favorite plants. It's a rattlesnake master. And I actually got one plant from the Jenkins Arboretum. And originally it was over there near the Huchera, and it was not happy there. So I moved it over here. And that's the other thing is with a newbie is that you learn through experience where plants are unhappy and where plants exactly. And so when I moved it out here, it really, wow,
Multiplied.
yeah.
Are these tall stems flowers from it, or are they something else?
No,
Other dandelions? Okay.
yeah. And this is black-eyed Susan over here.
Oh, yeah.
And this is snake root.
What is it?
Snake
And-
root, white snake.
Right.
Snake root.
I'm very happy with this. You know what it is?
Yeah, it's
Yes,
milkweed.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the
And
poppies.
yeah,
Amsonia.
and yeah,
Oh,
and the
yeah,
Amsonia.
Amsonia.
And this is Coreopsis over here, which will eventually will flower.
Yeah.
And I'm especially happy with the penstemon. It's going to look beautiful when it flowers. You see that over? I mean, it really looks lovely.
Yeah, I love
just
the
coming
dark
out like
foliage
that.
with
Beautiful
it.
contrast.
Yeah, yeah,
Is this Liatris?
yeah, yes, that's right. I had great privacy, because we were the property was surrounded by Leland cypresses, which are these
these over here.
Oh yeah.
But these do nothing for local wildlife. So I actually decided to chop it all down. And because I was operating on a limited budget, I created a composting brush fence of the chopped down Leland cypresses there, and because I've learned that you're not going to persuade your natives to go native with eyesores, I've started to, so I planted the honeysuckle brush, trumpet honeysuckle, to cover up the eyesore. But because it's a garden in transition, some of the eyesores are still here, but hopefully next year and the year after, the coverage will,
As they mature.
as they
Stuff
mature,
matures,
right?
yep.
So one needs to take a multi-year view, but you've already seen like the finished glorious work, and this is like the start. Here's where the starting point is.
But you know what? It makes it real for people that you can, it shows it's a process.
Yes, it's a process. And so this will look fantastic in the summer. This is all helianthus here. And this was given to me by a friend in Wallingford. This is more Ohio spiderwort. These are rose bushes, which I planted before I knew better that they're non-natives, but they're okay. They're okay. And because of Doug Tallamy's influence, I planted 4 oak trees here. So here's one. Here's another. There's another. And then the 4th one is over there. So they're all planted pretty close to each other. And we'll see what happens. Because what Doug Tallamy says is that when your oaks are planted close together like that, their roots will intertwine. So they will stabilize each other. And they will create their own microclimate the way that they like it. So I'm going to test out his claim.
That's awesome.
And one. And they were all planted at the same time, but because of the different sunlight and nature of the ground and all that, because this one is planted near the redbud. You see that redbud?
Yeah, the redbud.
Yeah. Right. That's a relatively new redbud too. That's like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old redbud, because we had another gorgeous redbud that came down because our neighbor's sycamore tree fell down, and so it destroyed this whole area. But as a result, I had then to rethink this area. And when I planted this redbud, the redbud people from whom I got it said that I needed to put biochar in, and so I did that, and the redbud just did really well. But the rose bushes in the area also did great, and then the oak tree also did great. So that's why I think between the sun and the biochar, this oak tree does much better than these other ones. You see?
Oh yeah, they're little.
And I'm so lucky that I get so many plants given to me from my neighbor. So a neighbor gave me this monada last year. And it's now looking so nice.
Wow.
Over here.
So Monarda's also a native?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is
Bee-balm.
redbud native?
Yes. Redbud is native. And another neighbor gave me the baptisia.
Oh, baptisia, yeah.
And this area, this used to hold a non-native hydrangea. They're native hydrangeas, and then they're non-native hydrangeas. So we took out the non-native hydrangea and planted the baptisia here. And here's Joe Pye weed coming up. You see?
Oh yeah, Joe Pye weed.
Sensitive fern.
By the side of the road.
Sensitive fern. And native iris. and the part of going native meant that I wanted to get rid of the non-native trees, and this is like a non-native sycamore maple. But when we tried to take it down, branch by branch, the squirrels, which were way up, carried out a non-violent resistance. And so
I love it. That's great.
So we decided to let it be, and instead we planted a silver maple next to it. Yeah, and from the branches of the old sycamore maple, we created this brush pile, which is an eyesore, and the eyesore was covered originally by forsythia, which is a non-native. So we took out the forsythia with great effort and great pain, but to replace them, I've planted spice bush. You see that? One here, and one there that is not growing very nicely. And so over time, the spice bush will cover this eyesore, and but the neat thing about it was last year I saw a bunch of baby birds in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we have raspberries, which I also just planted, raspberry bush.
Oh, yeah.
And pawpaw tree.
Okay.
Now the pawpaw tree and the spice bush were given to us, from the EAC Upper Providence thing. Julie, was our person in media who made that happen. And ironweed here, which will be like Joe Pye weed, newly planted. Yes. Oh, that's Philadelphia fleabane, and it's wonderful, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
And it goes well with the red roses, are of course non-native, but I will always value it because it was given to me, I think 7 or 8 years ago, by the young woman who's about to become my daughter-in-law.
Oh.
And so it's very precious.
I just love that. Is so beautiful.
Thank you. So this is you see, this is the old the helianthus, but it's covered. I have to clean it up. I mean, this is like it takes so much work. I have to clean it up so that it can show itself and give room to spread. Which it's and the same here, because this is a wonderful plant. It's anise hyssop.
Oh, hyssop.
Ah.
Yeah, and it was growing very beautifully last year and so on. But the other plants will need to be trimmed back so that the anise hyssop, can thrive. But this is why, the life of a new gardener is
Always work.
always work, right? And this is pussy toes.
Oh yeah, I just got some.
And this is phlox. And what I'm hoping is that they will spread as ground cover over here. And over here is again newly planted little bluestem.
Oh, okay.
And I hope that they will do something here. And did I mention the strawberries already?
No,
About strawberries?
Oh,
That's,
wow.
when they flower and when they create, the fruit, it will be a race between me and the birds.
Yes, I can imagine.
And I think everybody's betting for the birds.
Betting on the birds, I
Betting on
bet,
the
yeah.
birds, right.
How funny. And that's a nice thing.
I do like this thing, this thing here of the wild geraniums, and again you can sort of see the stumps from the Leland cypress that we chopped down, and the brush fence that is there. The common sassafras was a a volunteer. It just volunteered there. But we planted the viburnum, arrowroot viburnum, 1, 2, 3. So over time, we hope that this will be less of an eyesore as the arrowroot viburnum, kicks in.
So will you keep the Phytolacca, the pokeweed, because it's native, or will you get rid of it because it's so big and difficult?
Right. I will cut it back, but the birds are very happy with it. So
Right.
I'll let some of it go very big, and then I'll cut others if they encroach, too much. I'll cut them back, but I won't get rid of them. Part of the transition, the house came with the purple, the wisteria. It's either Chinese or Japanese wisteria. So I thought I had removed it, and I planted instead American wisteria, which is the white flower. But apparently we did not really succeed in removing it yet. So we're going to keep at it, and sort of like let the American wisteria thrive and cut back on the Japanese wisteria. But from neighbors, this wonderful liatris, you see, and yarrow. Oh, and we had here the hydrangea that was non-native. So we removed the non-native hydrangea from here and from there, and there we planted, given by a neighbor, the baptisia, and here the sweet pepper bush, which is again, hopefully will feed local wildlife, and so this is to cover the eyesore. You see?
That's beautiful.
More green and gold over here. This is a 1 year. This is planted last year, and this is planted this year, of the green and gold. This is more aster, and I'll probably chop it down, over time. And over here, again to cover up the eyesore, I got some Carolina jessamine. You can't sort of see it now because I just planted it this spring, but hopefully over time it'll cover this area up. And here we planted 2 blackjack oaks. Yeah. And this is all wood poppy. And this is a Japanese hydrangea that is actually very, very beautiful, but non-native. And so what I've done is to plant Virginia climber. And the Virginia climber, of course, is native and will feed local wildlife. And the Virginia climber will climb all over the hydrangea, and it has very pretty flowers too. So the two will, mesh together. So there's one for my eye, and then there's one for local wildlife, but also for my eye. And more wood poppy, wood celandine here. And this was given given by a neighbor. Neighbors give each other plants, and that's really important. And the green wagon, of course, will jumpstart that.
Thank you
So
so
thank
much.
you. Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for coming.